Hello and welcome to the All Things Horror podcast with me, Amazon best-selling horror author and horror fanatic, Rick Wood, where me and my guests discuss all things horror. Coming up on today's show.
We were scared. At the end of this message, it said, "I believe I've just thought through a door." Every time, and I've been to that cottage a lot, and the village, something happens. I felt very, very unnerved during writing that book, and I did feel a little vulnerable, so I had to ramp up the protection while I was writing it.
Hello and welcome to my brand spanking new podcast. This is Rick Wood, and today I am interviewing Shani Struthers. This is a new podcast that I've set up where I am going to discuss all things horror with my guests. So we'll get their horror profile, we'll find out what their favourite horror movie is, horror moment, horror creator, and then we will discuss all about their background in horror. Specifically today with best-selling author Shani Struthers. I have been working hard on the latest Sensitives book, and I've finished the first draft, so I have now got some time to put together to enjoy this conversation. It's going to be in two parts. Every podcast will be in two parts, so it'll be one on the first Friday of the month, and the second will be on the third Friday of the month. So this is part one of the interview with Shani Struthers, and it was an absolute delight to talk to Shani. She is a very spiritual person and a very talented author, and without further ado, here is the interview. Hello there. So here I am with Shani Struthers.
Shani?
Was it Shani Struthers?
Shani, yeah.
I thought it was Shani. I've been saying Shani this whole time.
Everyone does, honestly.
I did a Facebook Live video earlier when I said I'm meeting Shani Struthers.
You can call me Shani if you like.
Shani.
Honestly, I've been called worse.
Right, I'm here with Shani Struthers, horror author, or not horror, we'll get onto that later.
Yep.
Of the Psychic Survey series.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just want to kind of tell us a bit about your background in terms of your writing and the kind of the books that you write? And
Okay. I've always written, as most writers have, most authors have. I worked for 20 years in the travel industry as a copywriter and wrote about all these wonderful places around the world, all via research, I might add. And then about 5 years ago, I decided I would write novels, and because I'd always wanted to, and so I did. I sat down and I wrote a full-length novel which did very, very well.
which novel was that?
It was The Runaway Year, which is a romance, and it was a story I just had in my head, and I thought I'd get it out on paper and send it off, and it just did very, very well. It got several publishers wanted it. I got it published. It sold well. I wrote two more in the series, so a trilogy. And my first love is, well, it's paranormal.
How easy was it then to make that transition from romance to paranormal?
Well, very easy, actually. I sat down and I wrote The Haunting of Highdown Hall, only intending it to be...
It's the first Psychic Surveys.
That's the first Psychic Surveys, but it was intended to be a standalone book. And it did very, very well. It's 4 years old now, and it's sort of been a bestseller in its genre for probably about 80% of that time. So I loved writing it. I knew I'd found my niche, and I knew that the story had legs and could go a lot further. And so far, I'm just finished book 5, which is called Dissension. And I'll soon start book 6, which is called Legion. And
they're with the same characters as well. Is it Ruby, the main character?
Ruby Davis is the main character.
Yeah.
She's got a supporting team in her Psychic Surveys team. There's Theo, an older lady who's nearly 70. There's Ness in her 50s. It was very dark and brooding. And there's young, bubbly Corinna, who's in her early 20s. Ruby herself is mid-20s, and she also has the support of her boyfriend Cash as well. Oh, and Jed, the ghost dog.
The ghost dog, of course.
Who
I
is
like
extremely
Jed,
popular.
It's probably my favourite character, actually. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Always shows up. And I mean, I've just finished writing the first draft of the 6th book in the Sensitives, and I've found it very difficult to keep reinventing it as well. Is it hard to now you're on kind of book 6 to it's not?
Well, the funny thing is, when I decided it was going to be a series, I thought, okay, but I don't need this series to go on and on and on, okay? Because personally, I don't actually read series. I read standalones. But basically I was going to end it at book 6 with Legion. However, I've discovered, A, I love these characters, B, readers seem to love these characters, but also there is just so much, it has so much scope. So I've decided that Series 1 is book 1 to 6, and then I will start Series 2, which will be book 7 to 12. Now, Series 2 will be quite different to Series 1, where Series 1 is very Ruby-centric. Series 2 will be more evenly spread throughout the characters.
Okay.
And you can get a taste for in depth for the other characters in the Psychic Surveys companion novels, which is basically a spin-off from the Psychic Surveys series and is a bunch of novellas, which really tell you, well, they focus on each individual character. So Blake Mort focuses on Corinna, 13 focuses on Ness, Eve is the prequel to the Psychic Surveys series, and that's from Theo's point of view. And I'm currently writing Rosamond, which is another character that's much referred to in the series, who's the great-grandmother, but we don't actually really know anything about, but actually everything stems from her. So I'm currently writing that, and that's in the companion series.
Okay, so you've kind of got a lot of places to go with this series,
have,
and a lot of kind of reinvention.
That seems to be, yeah.
And is it the characters that are driving that, and just the love of wanting to be with those characters more?
Yeah, I mean, they're very character-driven books, but, you know, the paranormal is a vast subject, and they're right in the thick of it, and so there is just no end to cases that they can work on and exploring different parts of the paranormal.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to come back to Psychic Surveys later.
Yep.
First, I want to do your horror profile.
Okay.
So number 1, your favourite horror movie?
The Haunting. Not the remake, the old black and white with Claire Bloom and Julie Harris.
Really? I had the remake on VHS.
Yeah, I know.
Was it in '99 that came out?
Yeah, I think they had Catherine Zeta-Jones
Yes,
in it. Yeah. No, go to the black and white. It is fantastic. It is so chilling.
So what about it made it your favourite horror movie? What was so chilling about it?
Because it's all suggestion. Nothing actually really happens, and that just gets your imagination whirring. So it's not laid out on a plate for you. You have to think. And where your imagination goes, well, it has no bounds, does it? So it's more frightening, I think.
Just, I've never seen it. I have to make
You
sure I
must
watch
see
it as
it,
well.
yeah.
I think horror movies are always better in black and white
Oh, I
or
know.
grainy VHS, not
Definitely.
HD. Horror movies shouldn't be
No,
HD.
God, no.
Favourite horror book?
Well, actually, it is the book that inspired that film, which is Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. I buy into this whole theory of less is more. What interests me most is the psychological aspect of horror, and actually, is it really horror or is it the mind? And with that book, you get to the end of it and you think, well, did all that really happen? Or actually, you know, was it because Eleanor was just mad? And her madness was unleashed at Hill House. So you get to the book with it's not all neatly wrapped up. I know readers love sometimes books to be wrapped up, you know, resolved, and I do too, but sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I just don't know really what happened there. It was like a trip, really.
Yeah. Your favourite horror moment?
One that sticks with me is in The Shining, and it's not the here's Johnny bit. It's when he goes into that room number, I've forgotten the room number, of the Outlook Hotel.
I don't know.
I know.
Well, the room in Outlook Hotel.
He goes into the room and there's this beautiful woman in the bath.
Yeah.
And she's looking at him and doing all this, and she gets out the bath and they start to dance, her and Jack Nicholson, and then she turns into this old hag and he's like, "Aah!" and he's backs out that. I love that. I can barely watch that on the TV when that moment comes on.
Are you a big Stephen King fan?
Massive, but early Stephen King.
Really?
Not so much late.
How many, out of interest, of your customer reviews on Amazon mention Stephen King? How many are always like, it's comparing you to Stephen King?
Yeah, no, I have been compared to him and my other favourite, James Herbert, quite a bit. I don't know, 20%.
20%. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got one book where...
I don't think I'm like Stephen King, not at all.
No. I've got one book where they say not as good as Stephen King, and another review says better than Stephen King.
Yeah.
Why does it always have to be Stephen King?
I've got that. I've got one that says, Stephen King doesn't lose any sleep, and the other one, this is better than Stephen King. You think... Well, I mean, obviously everything's subjective, but...
It's like people only know there's one horror author sometimes, but there's a lot more.
And I'm not trying to be Stephen King anyway, and I wouldn't, No, but early Stephen King for me, I'm afraid.
So what's early Stephen King?
The old The Stand is my favourite. I think that was his finest hour. The Shining, Salem's Lot, everything basically up to Do McKee, which I loved. Past Do McKee, no, I've not been.
I'd agree. I enjoyed Carrie and The Shining.
Oh, Carrie was the first book of his I read as a teenager.
But since that, I tried reading Sleeping Beauties, didn't get past the first 60 pages. Lizzie's Story didn't get past the first 60 pages.
No, I did read Lizzie's Story, but I can't remember what it was about. I have Sleeping Beauties, and I keep looking at it, and it's this massive tome, and I keep thinking, I just don't know if I can dive into that just yet. So I quite like shorter books at the moment. Life's so busy.
This question is obviously going to lead on to what we're going to talk about. Why write in horror? But do you write in horror?
No, I don't write horror books. I write paranormal. There is a difference. I think horror books are. They are terrifying. They're quite gratuitous in a way. It's some of it's blood, gore. It's blah blah. I think I write a more psychological form of horror, taking my inspiration from Shirley Jackson.
Are you adverse to people labeling that as horror then? Do you not like being called horror, or is it something you kind of like?
I'd rather not be called horror, but unfortunately I am called horror because they, we seem, like with Amazon, etc., we seem to just be lumped into one big sort of genre. So I'd rather not be called horror because I'm not horror. And sometimes I have had reviews who are saying, well, this wasn't horrifying. Well, no, it was never supposed to be. I'm very interested in ghost stories, in dealing with the spiritual world, the paranormal. I like to come at it from a sympathetic viewpoint. So if your house is being haunted, if you feel there's a presence in your house, if you're terrified by it, okay, understandably, you would be. But let's try and see what is present in your house and why.
Okay.
And then come at it from that angle. Even if it appears to be something quite demonic or mischievous or blah, blah, blah. Let's see why it's there, because by understanding, we can hopefully help.
So if paranormal was the subgenre, the main genre, if it's not horror, would it be thriller or...
Well, they are quite thrilling, I like to think. Thrillers, yeah.
Thrillers, yeah.
Yeah, because they do reach a crescendo. It all builds up, the tension builds up and up and up. Supernatural, yeah, I do. I do call my books supernatural thrillers, yeah. Or ghost stories, one of the two.
Cool. Personal horror experience. So have you ever had kind of personal horror experience? I can see your notes. There's a big chunk of paragraph there, isn't it? Obviously,
I'll keep it short. Don't
tell us as much as you can.
Well, I've had plenty of paranormal experiences, but none of them have been horrific, I'm afraid. Disturbing, yes, but not horrific.
Can you tell us about some of them?
Yeah. As a child, I was particularly receptive and saw and experienced things. Probably too many to go into now. One example. Yeah, you know that saying, things that go bump in the night? Well, when I was a child, I was staying in a caravan in Cornwall, and I was in the room by myself. I'd going to sleep, and something kept thumping against the underside of the mattress, and it was thump, thump, thump. And I thought, for God's sake! So I looked underneath, nothing. Called my mum, who'd come in, look underneath, nothing. As soon as she came in the room, it would stop. As soon as she left, it would carry on. And this was going on, and this was going on. And I was thinking, what the hell is it? Anyway, eventually I got so tired, and I just said, will you just stop? I want to go to sleep. And it did stop. I put that down to mischievous sprites, Cornish sprites, I think. More recently, I was staying with some friends in a cottage in Dorset, one I've written about in the in the Psychic Surveys series, which is Old Cross Cottage. And we were larking about in the graveyard at midnight, as you do, nearby graveyard. It's literally a few feet up the road. My friend was using her iPhone as a torch, and she'd just been texting, so it was open on the text message page. Suddenly, a message shot into the response box, as if you'd written it yourself and you were going to send it. And it just came up, it was complete, and it was referencing things that basically you shouldn't reference, quite personal things.
Okay.
That I can't really mention here because it's quite sensitive, but we were horrified. I was horrified actually. We were scared. At the end of this message, it said, "I believe I've just thought through a door." So as if it was a portal or something.
Right.
Something had managed to tune in and get this using technology.
How did you react to that?
We really unnerved. We got out of the graveyard, went back to the cottage, and I don't think we slept for the rest of the night. Really unnerved. There's a lot of strange things happen. Now, this graveyard, you're not just larking about and it being disrespectful. You actually have to walk through it to get to the pub.
Yeah.
So unless you want to go a really long way round, which we don't. So there you walk through it, and then there's a little lane at the back, and you meander up that, and there's the pub. So we were coming back from the pub. We weren't just larking about being disrespectful. I must point that out, because I wouldn't do that. But every time I go through that pub, I go through that graveyard after dark, every time, and I've been to that cottage a lot, and the village, something happens. And it's one of 2 churches in the UK that have the relics of a saint, and it's a place of pilgrimage. It's centuries old, and people have gone here believing something for centuries. So make of that what you will. We're still mystified to that day. We even took the phone to the Apple store and said, "Is this possible that it could pick up certain things that we've been thinking, or saying or whatever during the day?" Well, no, it was, considering the content of the message, which, as I say, is quite sensitive, so I can't repeat it, it's not possible. So it's outside of normal, therefore it's paranormal.
Yeah. Wow. So you say that you're quite sensitive, and have you ever been really concerned, really worried something's going to happen? So you've had punching messages, have you ever been really concerned for your safety, maybe?
No, I haven't so far. But I do protect myself a lot with all my crystals and white light, good intent, etc., which is normal protection stuff that anyone who's sensitive would know about.
When do you protect yourself?
All the time. You just constantly spin a web around you. So I do feel, when I was writing Rise to Me, which is a very dark book, because that's the second in the Psychic Survey series, and I touch on a lot of occult stuff, Aleister Crowley, etc., I felt very, very unnerved during writing that book, and I did feel a little vulnerable, so I had to ramp up the protection while I was writing it. And whilst I was writing Blakemore, which is another one of my scarier books, I was writing about, I'm quite good at manifestation, and I was writing about a infestation of flies, and I was really intent. I was writing this, and I looked up, and there were flies everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't feel unnerved by that particularly. I just, oh goodness, I've done it again. When I was reading Carrie, the first book I ever read, I was reading the scene where she's at the prom and the pig's blood falls on her, and I looked up and there was a great big puddle of blood on my hand. I thought, oh, I'm bleeding. So I got a tissue, wiped it away. There was no cut, there was nothing. There was never any explanation as to where that blood came from.
Coming up in part 2, out in 2 weeks' time.
What I can say is that 90% of cases are due to something completely explainable, but 10% aren't. Who it was, we don't know, but it was very, very dark.